I, 32, came home from my business trip 2 days early. I wanted to surprise my husband, Mark, 34. The surprise ended up being on me. My two large suitcases were sitting on the front porch. A light drizzle was starting to fall, making dark spots on the canvas. I frowned, confused. Maybe the delivery service had dropped off a package and Mark had put my bags out by mistake when he left for work. It made no sense, but it was the only thing I could think of. I walked up the steps and pulled out my house key. I pushed it into the lock. It did not turn. I tried again, jiggling it a little. Nothing. It felt like hitting a solid piece of metal. I stared at the key, then at the lock. It looked new. The brass was shiny and unscratched, not like our old, weathered one. My heart started to beat a little faster. This was wrong. This was very wrong. I knocked on the door. I knocked again, louder this time. No one answered. I knew Mark was at work, but a sliver of hope made me try anyway. I pulled out my phone and called him. It went straight to voicemail. That was unusual. He always answered my calls. I walked around the side of the house to the garage. We had a keypad entry system. I typed in our code. It was our anniversary date. The light blinked red. Access denied. I tried it again, slowly, making sure I hit each number perfectly. Red light. Access denied. A cold feeling washed over me. I was locked out of my own house. My house. The house I had put the down payment on with my inheritance from my grandmother. The drizzle turned into a steady rain. My hair was getting wet. My suitcases were getting soaked. I felt a surge of anger mixed with panic. I called Mark again. Voicemail. I sent him a text message. Why are my suitcases on the porch, and why can't I get into the house? I stared at the phone, waiting for the three little dots to appear, showing he was typing a reply. Nothing happened. I tried to think logically. There had to be an explanation. A simple, logical explanation. But my mind was blank. All I could feel was the cold rain and the heavy weight of my keys in my hand. The keys that no longer worked. I decided to try one more thing. A silly, desperate idea flashed in my mind. Mark was obsessed with his wedding day. He called it the start of his real life. His mother, Diana, had planned the entire thing. She often talked about it like it was a royal event. I thought about the numbers. Our wedding date was June 8th. 0608. What if he changed the code? What would he change it to? I stood in the rain, my mind racing. I tried his birthday. No. I tried my birthday. No. Then I thought about Diana. She loved doing things backward, saying it was a way to unwind problems. It was one of her many strange little philosophies. On a whim, I typed in the wedding date backward. 8060. The light blinked green. The garage door rumbled open. I stood there for a moment, stunned. It worked. A small part of me felt a rush of relief. I could get out of the rain, but a much larger part of me was filled with a deep, chilling dread. Why would he change the code to that? And why would he not tell me? I dragged my wet suitcases into the garage and closed the door behind me. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked to the interior door that led into the kitchen. I turned the knob. It was locked. Of course, it was locked. I had been a fool to think this would be easy. I went back to my car, which was still parked in the driveway. I sat in the driver's seat, the rain drumming on the roof. I needed to think. Mark was not answering his phone. The locks were changed. The garage code was changed to a secret, backward version of our wedding date. My belongings were outside. This was not a mistake. This was deliberate. Someone had locked me out of my own life. And I had a terrible feeling I knew who it was. My mother-in-law, Diana. She had never liked me. She thought I was not good enough for her perfect son. She criticized everything I did, from the way I cooked to the way I dressed. Mark always said she meant well. He always asked me to be patient with her. I called him one more time. This time he answered. His voice was tense. Clara? Is everything okay? I thought you were coming home on Friday. I got done early, I said, my own voice tight and controlled. Mark, why are my suitcases on the porch? There was a pause. I could hear faint noises in the background, like someone was shuffling papers. Oh, that, he said, trying to sound casual. Mom is here. She decided to help you unpack. I felt a flash of hot anger. Help me unpack? By putting my bags outside in the rain? And why are the locks changed? My key does not work.
He sighed.
It was a long, suffering sound he always made when he was about to blame me for something. Look, Clara, Mom thought the house needed a deep clean. A fresh start. She had a locksmith come over to install better locks. For security. She was worried about the old ones. For security, I repeated, my voice flat. And she did not think to give me a new key or to tell me the new garage code. We were going to tell you when you got home on Friday, he said. This is your fault for coming home early. You ruined the surprise. The surprise. The sheer audacity of his words left me breathless. I was standing in my own garage, locked out of my own house, and he was telling me I had ruined a surprise. What surprise, Mark? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. The surprise of being homeless? Do not be dramatic, he snapped. Mom is staying with us for a while. She just wanted to make the place more comfortable for everyone. She felt the clutter was giving her anxiety. My clutter. My 2 suitcases. So she put my things outside. She was making space in the closet for her things, he said, his voice defensive. She was going to bring them in as soon as she was done organizing. You know how she is. She likes things a certain way. I knew how she was. She was a controlling, manipulative woman who had been trying to drive a wedge between us since the day we met. And now it seemed she was finally succeeding. So, where am I supposed to go, Mark? Just go to a hotel for a couple of nights, he said, as if it were the most reasonable suggestion in the world. Let Mom finish what she started. We will see you on Friday. Everything will be perfect then. A hotel, I said. You want me to go to a hotel? It is just for 2 nights, Clara, he said, his tone turning impatient. Do not make a big deal out of this. It is for the best. Mom knows what she's doing. I did not say anything. I could not. The betrayal was so sharp, so complete, it felt like a physical blow. He was choosing his mother over me. He was siding with her while she literally threw me out of our home. My home. Clara? Are you there? He asked. I am here, I said softly.
Good.
So, a hotel then? Just text me the address so I know where you are. No, I said.
No?
What do you mean no? He asked, his voice rising. I mean no, I said again, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The panic was gone. The hurt was still there, a raw wound in my chest, but it was being replaced by something else. Something hard and cold. I am not going to a hotel, Mark. Then what are you going to do? He demanded. I am going to figure things out, I said. I hung up the phone before he could reply. I sat in my car for a long time, the engine off, just listening to the rain. He had not asked if I was okay. He had not apologized. He had just told me to go away. He and his mother had planned this. They wanted me gone at least for a few days so they could do whatever they wanted in my house. A cold resolve settled in my bones. They had started this fight, but I was going to finish it. My first call was to my best friend, Sarah. I told her everything, my voice shaking at first, then growing stronger with each word. He did what? She shrieked into the phone. Clara, that is not just messed up. That is insane. You need to get out of there. I am out, I said grimly. I am literally sitting in my car in the driveway. They locked me out. Okay, first thing is first, she said, her voice all business. You are coming to my place.
Right now. Do not argue with me.
I have a spare room and a bottle of wine with your name on it. Tears pricked my eyes.
Thank you, Sarah.
I do not know what I would do. We will figure it out, she said fiercely. Those two have picked a fight with the wrong woman. I drove to Sarah's house, my mind a whirl of anger and confusion. How could Mark do this? We had been married for 5 years. We had built a life together. Or so I had thought. Had it all been a lie? Had Diana's poison been seeping into our marriage all along, and I had just been too blind to see it? When I got to Sarah's, she enveloped me in a huge hug. "We're going to handle this," she whispered in my ear. "First wine, then a plan." We sat in her cozy living room, and I told her the whole story again, filling in the details about Diana's constant criticism, Mark's passivity, and my growing sense of isolation. "She has always hated you, Clara," Sarah said, swirling the red wine in her glass. "She sees you as a rival for Mark's affection. And Mark, bless his spineless heart, has let her get away with it. He told me I ruined the surprise," I said, the words still tasting like ash in my mouth. "He said it was my fault for coming home early." "That is classic gaslighting," Sarah said, her eyes flashing. "He is trying to make you feel like you are the crazy one. But you're not."
They are.
"This is a calculated move, Clara. They are trying to push you out." "But why?" I asked, my voice small. "Why now?" "Money," Sarah said without hesitation. "It is always about money. Did not you say your inheritance paid for most of that house?" I nodded slowly.
Yes.
"I put down 70% of the value. The deed is in both our names, but the money was mine." "There you go," she said, pointing at me with her wine glass. "Diana wants that house. She probably wants Mark to sell it, kick you out with a tiny settlement, and move in with her. Or maybe she wants to move in herself." A cold dread filled me. It made a horrible kind of sense. Diana had always complained about her small apartment. She was always talking about how much she loved our house, our garden, our neighborhood. "I need to find out what they are up to," I said, my voice hardening. "I need proof." "Okay, Operation Takedown is a go," Sarah said, topping up our glasses. "What is our first move?" "I need access to our finances," I said. "I have the login for our joint bank account. I am going to see if anything looks strange." I pulled out my laptop and logged into our bank's website. My hands were shaking slightly. I took a deep breath and clicked on the transaction history for our main checking account. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning the list of debits and credits. Everything looked normal at first. Mortgage payment, utility bills, grocery store purchases.
Then I saw it.
A transfer for $10,000 made 3 days ago. The recipient was an account I did not recognize. "Sarah, look at this," I said, turning the laptop toward her. She leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "Who is D. Stevens?" she asked. "I have no idea," I said. But Diana's maiden name was Stevens. We stared at each other, the same thought passing between us. Diana. She was siphoning money from our joint account, and Mark was letting her. Or worse, he was helping her. "This is bad, Clara," Sarah said softly. "This is really bad. This is not just a domestic dispute anymore. This could be fraud." "I need more information," I said, my mind racing. "I need to get back into that house."
"How?"
Sarah asked. "They changed the locks." A slow smile spread across my face. "They changed the front door lock," I said. "But they forgot about the garage. And I know the code." The next morning, I drove back to my house. I parked down the street, just in case Mark or Diana were home. I watched the house for a good 30 minutes. No one came in or out. Mark's car was gone, so he was likely at work. I hoped Diana had gone out with him. It was a risk, but I had to take it. I walked to the side of the house and stood in front of the garage keypad. I took a deep breath and typed in the code. 8060. The light turned green. The door slid open with a low rumble. I slipped inside and closed it behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. I was in. I stood in the garage for a moment, listening. The house was silent. The door to the kitchen was still locked. I looked around the garage. Mark was a tidy person, but today it was a mess. There were boxes stacked against one wall. Boxes I had never seen before. They were moving boxes, the kind you get from a storage facility. I walked over and looked at the labels. Kitchen, living room, Mark's office. They were packing up our house. My house. They were planning on moving. Without me. The anger that had been simmering inside me boiled over. This was not just a deep clean. This was a hostile takeover. I had to find out what was going on. I looked at the locked door to the kitchen. There was no way to get through it without a key. but there had to be another way. I remembered the small window in the laundry room, which was attached to the garage. It was high up, but maybe I could reach it. I dragged a stepladder over from the corner and positioned it under the window. I climbed up, my hands trembling slightly. The window was locked, but it was an old, simple latch. I took out my pocket knife and managed to jimmy it open. I pushed the window up, held my breath, and wriggled through the small opening. I landed on the laundry room floor in a clumsy heap. I had done it. I was inside my own house. The place was eerily quiet. It was clean, too clean. It felt sterile, like a hotel room. All of my personal touches were gone. The photos of my family on the mantelpiece were gone. The throw blanket I had crocheted was missing from the couch. The stack of books I was reading was gone from the coffee table. It was like I had been erased. I walked into the kitchen. On the counter, there was a stack of mail. I sifted through it. Bills, junk mail, and a large manila envelope addressed to Mark from a real estate agency. My blood ran cold. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside were documents. A listing agreement for a house. They were putting it on the market. The agreement was already signed. By Mark. And next to his signature was a space for mine. A space that was still blank. But I had a feeling they had a plan for that. I walked through the house, my sense of violation growing with every step. I went into our bedroom. The closet was half empty.
My clothes were gone.
All of them. I ran to the guest room. There they were, stuffed into garbage bags in the corner. They had not even bothered to pack them in boxes. They had thrown them away like trash. I felt a wave of nausea. This was so much worse than I had imagined. They were not just pushing me out. They were trying to erase me completely, sell my home out from under me, and take all the money. I had to find more proof. I had to find something that would stop them. I went into Mark's office. It was the one room that looked untouched. His desk was neat, his computer shut down. I knew his password. It was the name of his childhood dog. I turned on the computer and logged in. I started searching his files, his emails, his browser history. For almost an hour, I found nothing. Just work documents and boring emails. I was about to give up when I saw a folder on his desktop labeled Projects. I clicked on it. Inside, there was a single file named New Beginnings. My hand hovered over the mouse. I was almost afraid to open it. I took a deep breath and double-clicked. It was a document. A financial plan. It detailed the sale of our house, the projected profit, and how the money would be divided. 50% to Mark. 50% to Diana Stevens. My name was not mentioned anywhere. There was a section on asset allocation. It listed stocks, bonds, and a new property. An apartment in a luxury building downtown. The plan was to use the money from my house to buy a new place for him and his mother. I scrolled down further. There were emails attached. Emails between Mark and Diana. I started reading them. The words swam before my eyes. She's gone until Friday. Mark had written to her a week ago. That gives us plenty of time to get everything ready. The locksmith is coming on Tuesday. Diana had replied, "Excellent. I will handle the packing. We need to make it look like she abandoned the property. It will be easier to file for divorce if we can prove desertion. Make sure you transfer another $10,000 to my account. I need it for the initial deposit on the new place." "I did it this morning," Mark wrote back. "I am worried about her signature on the sale agreement, Mom. What if she refuses to sign?" Diana's reply was chilling. "Do not worry, darling. I have a copy of her signature from your marriage license. I have been practicing. It will be perfect. She will never know."
Forgery.
They were planning to forge my signature to sell my house. I felt the air leave my lungs. I was not just being pushed out. I was being robbed. This was a criminal conspiracy. I printed out every single email. I saved the financial plan to a flash drive. I took pictures of the boxes in the garage and the empty spaces where my things used to be. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. As I was about to leave the office, I noticed something on Mark's bookshelf. Tucked behind a row of business books was a small, black box. I pulled it out. It was a small security camera, the kind people use as a nanny cam. I did not remember buying it. I turned it over. The brand was unfamiliar. I pressed the power button. A small blue light blinked on. It was active. I wondered where he had placed it. Was it watching me right now? A shiver went down my spine. I had to get out of there. I had enough evidence for now. I crept back through the house, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fury. I climbed back out the laundry room window, carefully closing it behind me. I slipped out of the garage, closing the big door with the remote for my car. As I walked down the street to my car, I felt like a spy in my own life. But the fear was being replaced by a cold, hard anger. They thought I was weak. They thought they could just erase me and take everything I had worked for. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I drove back to Sarah's house, the evidence clutched in my hand like a weapon. When I showed her the printouts, her face went pale. "Clara, this is unbelievable," she whispered, reading the emails between Mark and Diana. "They are literally plotting to steal your house. And forge my signature," I added, my voice grim. "This is more than just a divorce. This is a crime." "You need a lawyer," she said immediately. "Not just a divorce lawyer. You need a shark. Someone who can handle the criminal aspect of this." She was right. I spent the rest of the afternoon researching lawyers. I found a woman named Helen Pierce who specialized in complex divorces involving financial fraud. Her reviews were stellar. They called her a pit bull in a pantsuit. She was exactly what I needed. I called her office and made an appointment for the next day. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying the emails in my head. The cold, calculating way they had planned my destruction. The way Mark had so easily betrayed me. The man I had loved and trusted was a stranger to me. Or maybe he had been this person all along, and I had just refused to see it. His mother had molded him into her perfect, spineless puppet, and I was the obstacle they needed to remove. The next morning, I met with Helen Pierce. She was a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. I laid out all my evidence on her large mahogany desk. The bank statements, the real estate agreement, the printed emails, the photos. She listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I was finished, she leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers. "Mr. Miller and his mother are not just greedy," she said, her voice calm and measured. "They are monumentally stupid. To put all of this in writing, it is a gift." "So, I have a case?" I asked, a flicker of hope igniting within me. "A case," she said with a small, humorless smile. "Mr. Miller, you have a cannon, and they have a water pistol. The question is not whether we will win. The question is how we want to win." She explained my options. We could go to the police immediately and press charges for conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. That would be messy and public. Or we could use this evidence as leverage to get exactly what I wanted in the divorce settlement. "What do you want, Clara?" she asked, her eyes fixed on mine. I thought for a moment. What did I want? I wanted them to pay. I wanted them to feel the same humiliation and fear that they had tried to inflict on me. I wanted to see Diana's smug, superior face crumble. I wanted Mark to understand the gravity of what he had done. "I want the house," I said, my voice firm. "Free and clear. It should be in my name only, and I want every penny they took from our joint account returned to me. With interest." Helen nodded. "That is a good start. We can certainly achieve that. But I think we can do more. I think we can make them suffer a little." A slow smile spread across her face. "I have an idea," she said. "It is a bit theatrical. But in my experience, people like Diana and Mark respond to theater. They care about appearances more than anything else. So, we're going to give them a show." Helen's plan was simple, yet brilliant. We would let them think their plan was working. We would let them proceed with the sale of the house. We would wait until they were at the closing, ready to sign the final papers and collect their fraudulent check. And that is when we would strike. "But what about my signature?" I asked. "They are planning to forge it." "Let them," Helen said with a glint in her eye. "A forged signature on a legal document is a felony. Once they sign that paper, they have crossed a line they can never uncross. They will be trapped. The plan was terrifying, but also exhilarating. For the next week, I lived in a state of suspended animation. I stayed with Sarah, ignoring Mark's increasingly frantic calls and texts. He left me voicemails, his tone shifting from annoyed to worried to angry. "Clara, where are you? You cannot just disappear. Mom is worried sick." Another one said, "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. If you do not come home, I am going to have to take legal action." His threats were laughable. He had no idea what was coming. I let him stew in his own manufactured anxiety. Meanwhile, Helen was working behind the scenes. She contacted the real estate agent and the title company, informing them of the situation without revealing our full hand. She made sure that when the time came, everyone would be on our side. The day of the closing arrived. Helen called me in the morning.
"It is showtime," she said.
"They're scheduled to sign at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I will be there with you. Are you ready?" "I am ready," I said, my voice steady. I was not the same woman I had been a week ago. The woman who had cried in her car in the rain was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone colder, harder, and much, much stronger. Sarah drove me to the title company's office. "You got this, Clara," she said, squeezing my hand. "Go get them." Helen was waiting for me in the lobby. She gave me a reassuring nod. "They are in the conference room," she said. "Let us make our entrance." We walked down the hallway. I could hear their voices through the closed door. Diana's high, shrill laugh. Mark's low murmur. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The room went silent. Mark and Diana were sitting at a large conference table, along with the real estate agent and a woman from the title company. They all stared at me, their mouths open in shock. Mark's face went white. Diana's eyes narrowed into slits. "Clara," Mark stammered, standing up so quickly he almost knocked over his chair. "What are you doing here?" "I believe this is a meeting about my house," I said, my voice cool and even. "I thought I should be present." Diana recovered quickly. She gave me a sickly sweet smile. "Clara, dear.
"We were so worried about you."
We thought you had left us." "I did not go anywhere," I said, looking directly at her. "You locked me out." The real estate agent and the title agent exchanged an uneasy glance. Now, let's not air our dirty laundry in public," Diana said, her voice dripping with false concern. "This is just a simple misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," I said. I placed my briefcase on the table and opened it. I took out the stack of printed emails and slid them across the table toward Mark. "I believe you wrote these." Mark looked at the papers, his face turning from white to a sickly green. He could not speak. He just stared at the evidence of his betrayal. "And Diana," I said, turning to my mother-in-law, "I believe you were planning on forging my signature today. You have been practicing, have not you?" Diana's smile vanished. Her face contorted with rage. "How dare you," she hissed. "You ungrateful little witch. After everything I have done for you." "What have you done for me?" I asked, my voice rising. "You have tried to steal my home. You have tried to steal my money. You have conspired with my husband to ruin my life. This is a family matter." Diana spat, looking at the other people in the room. "It is none of your business." "I am afraid it is my business," Helen said, stepping forward. "My name is Helen Pierce. I am Clara's attorney. And what you have done is not a family matter. It is a criminal offense. Conspiracy to commit fraud.
Forgery. Theft.
I believe those carry significant prison sentences." The color drained from Diana's face. For the first time, she looked afraid. Mark looked like he was about to be sick. He sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. "Now, we can do this one of two ways," Helen continued, her voice like ice. "We can call the police right now and have you both arrested. Or, you can listen to our offer." Mark looked up, a flicker of hope in his terrified eyes. "What offer?" he whispered. "It is very simple," Helen said. "You will sign a quitclaim deed, transferring full ownership of the house to Clara. You will wire every cent you took from the joint account back to her, plus an additional $50,000 for emotional distress. You will agree to an uncontested divorce, in which you will receive no alimony and no assets from the marriage. You will do all of this today.
Right now.
In exchange, Clara will agree not to press criminal charges. The room was silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Mark and Diana looked at each other. I could see the silent calculation in their eyes. Their freedom versus their greed. This is extortion, Diana shrieked. We will not be bullied. Then I will make the call, Helen said, pulling out her phone. No, wait, Mark cried, his voice breaking. We will do it. We will sign. Diana shot him a look of pure hatred. You weak fool, she snarled. Shut up, Mom, Mark said, his voice trembling. It is over. We lost. The next hour was a blur of paperwork. The title agent, who was now fully aware of the situation, quickly drew up the necessary documents. Mark signed the quitclaim deed with a shaky hand, his eyes never meeting mine. He made a call to the bank and authorized the wire transfer. Diana sat in stony silence, her face a mask of fury. When it was all done, Helen turned to me. The house is yours, Clara. The money is on its way to your account. I looked at Mark, my husband of 5 years. He looked like a broken man. But I felt no pity for him. He had made his choice. He had chosen his mother's greed over our marriage. Why, Mark? I asked, my voice soft. Why did you do it? He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. She told me you were going to leave me, he stammered. She said you were unhappy, that you were planning to take the house and everything else. She said this was the only way to protect myself. I just shook my head. He was still blaming her, still refusing to take responsibility for his own actions. He was pathetic. Goodbye, Mark, I said. I turned and walked out of the room without looking back. Helen followed me. As we walked out of the building into the bright afternoon sun, I felt a sense of lightness I had not felt in years. It was over. I was free. So, what now? Helen asked. Now, I go home, I said with a smile. To my home. The first thing I did when I got back to the house was change the garage code. I erased the backward wedding date, that secret symbol of their betrayal. I changed it to my own birthday, a date that belonged only to me. Then I went inside. The house was still clean and sterile, but it did not feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. It felt like a new beginning. Over the next few weeks, I began to reclaim my space. I brought my things out of the garbage bags and put them back where they belonged. I filled the walls with photos of my friends and family. I bought a new, comfortable couch and a colorful rug. I made the house a reflection of me, not of the person Diana had tried to turn me into. The divorce was finalized quickly and quietly. Mark and Diana disappeared from my life. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that they had moved into Diana's small apartment together. The luxury condo they had dreamed of was gone. The money was gone. All they had left was each other. I could not imagine a more fitting punishment. One evening, a few months later, Sarah came over for dinner. We were sitting on my new couch, drinking wine and laughing. You seem happy, Clara, she said, smiling at me. Really happy. I am, I said, and I knew it was true. I feel like I can finally breathe again. The betrayal had been painful, more painful than anything I had ever experienced. But it had also been a gift. It had shown me my own strength. It had shown me who my real friends were. And it had freed me from a life that was slowly suffocating me. I had lost a husband, but I had found myself. And that was a trade I would make every single time. The house was no longer just a house. It was a symbol of my survival. A place where I was safe, where I was in control, and where no one could ever lock me out again. They had tried to erase me, but instead, they had given me a blank slate. And I was going to fill it with a life that was beautiful and joyful and entirely my own. The process of rebuilding was not just about redecorating. It was about reclaiming my sense of security. I had a new, high-tech security system installed, with cameras covering every angle of the exterior. I changed every single lock, including the ones on the windows. I felt a little paranoid at first, but the peace of mind was worth it. I never wanted to feel that vulnerable again. I also took a deep dive into my finances. With Helen's help, I set up new bank accounts that were solely in my name. I met with a financial advisor to plan for my future. The money Mark had been forced to return was a significant sum, and I wanted to be smart with it. It was my safety net, my independence fund. It was the silver lining of a very dark cloud. I had to deal with the social fallout as well. Mark's family was, for the most part, on his side. They saw me as the vindictive ex-wife who had taken him for everything he had. I received a few angry phone calls from his aunts and cousins. I listened calmly, then simply said, Mark and Diana were planning to forge my signature and sell my house without my knowledge. I have the emails to prove it. If you would like to see them, I would be happy to share. That usually ended the conversation quickly. They did not want to see the proof. They preferred their comfortable narrative of me as the villain. I learned to let it go. Their opinion of me did not matter. My own family, however, was a rock of support. My parents and my sister were horrified when I told them what had happened. My father, a quiet man who rarely showed his emotions, was so angry he could barely speak. He is a coward and a thief, he said of Mark. And his mother is even worse. Their unwavering belief in me was a balm to my wounded spirit. A few weeks after the divorce was final, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Mark. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was a long, rambling letter, full of self-pity and excuses. He blamed his mother for everything. He said she had manipulated him, that she had poisoned his mind against me. He begged for my forgiveness. He even suggested that we could try to work things out. I read the letter twice, then I tore it into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. There was no going back. He had shown me who he was. A man who would choose his mother's greed over his wife's well-being. A man who would lie, cheat, and steal to get what he wanted. There was nothing left to forgive. There was nothing left to salvage. Life settled into a new rhythm. I focused on my work, and my career began to flourish. Without the constant stress of my marriage, I had more energy and creativity than ever before. I got a promotion and then another one. I started traveling for work again, but this time, it was on my own terms. I enjoyed exploring new cities, meeting new people, and coming home to a house that was truly my own. I also reconnected with old friends and made new ones. My social life, which had dwindled during my marriage to Mark, blossomed. Sarah and I had a standing Friday night dinner date. We would talk for hours about everything and nothing. She was my anchor, my confidant, my partner in crime. One day, about a year after the divorce, Sarah and I were having brunch at our favorite cafe. You will never guess who I saw yesterday, she said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Who? I asked, taking a sip of my coffee. Diana, she said. She was working as a cashier at the grocery store. I almost choked on my coffee. You are kidding me, I said. Nope, Sarah said, clearly enjoying my shock. She looked miserable. Her hair was a mess. Her uniform was stained. She was ringing up my organic kale with a look on her face like she wanted to set it on fire. I could not help but laugh. The image of the proud, imperious Diana Stevens working as a cashier was just too perfect. What about Mark? I asked. I did not see him, she said. But I heard from my cousin who knows his cousin that he is still living with her in that tiny apartment. He is working some dead-end job and paying off the debts they accumulated. Apparently, Diana's spending habits did not change, even when their income did. I shook my head, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. They had gotten what they deserved. They had tried to destroy my life, and in the end, they had only destroyed their own. Their greed had been their downfall. I did not dwell on it for long. My life was too full, too happy, to waste any more time thinking about them. I had moved on. I was looking forward, not back. A few months later, I met someone. His name was Ben. He was kind and funny and smart. He was a landscape architect and he loved my garden. He did not talk about fresh starts or deep cleans, he talked about planting perennials and building a new deck. He was patient and understanding. When I told him about my divorce, he did not flinch. He just listened and then he told me he was sorry I had to go through that. We took things slowly. I was cautious with my heart. I had learned a hard lesson about trust. But Ben was different. He was open and honest. He had no secrets. His family was warm and welcoming. His mother gave me a hug the first time we met. She did not criticize my clothes or my cooking. She just seemed happy that her son was happy. One evening, Ben and I were sitting on the porch of my house, watching the sunset. He had brought over a bottle of wine and some cheese. It was a perfect, peaceful evening. "I love this house," he said, looking around. "It has such a good feeling about it." I smiled.
It did not always, I said.
"It took me a while to make it feel like home." "Well, you did a great job," he said, putting his arm around me. "It feels like you." I leaned my head on his shoulder. He was right. The house did feel like me. It was strong, it was independent, and it was full of light, just like its owner. The road to healing had been long and difficult. There were days when the anger and the hurt would bubble up unexpectedly. There were nights when I would lie awake, replaying the betrayal in my mind. But those days and nights became fewer and far between. The scars were still there, but they were fading. They were a reminder of what I had survived. I learned to trust my instincts. I learned to set boundaries. I learned that it was okay to put myself first. I learned that true strength is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up every single time. My experience with Mark and Diana had been a trial by fire. But I had emerged from the flames stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I had ever thought possible. They had tried to take everything from me. They had tried to leave me with nothing. But they had failed. I had my house. I had my friends. I had my career. And most importantly, I had myself. And that was more than enough. I was finally home, in every sense of the word. The legal process, while ultimately successful, was an education in itself. Helen Pierce was a master strategist. I remember one particular meeting where we were preparing for the confrontation at the title company. "They will try to gaslight you," Helen had warned me, her gaze steady. "They will call you dramatic, emotional, crazy. They will try to make you doubt your own reality. Your job is to remain calm. Stick to the facts. Do not engage with their emotional attacks. You have the evidence. The evidence is your shield and your sword." I took her words to heart. During the confrontation, when Diana called me an ungrateful little witch, I felt a surge of old anger, the familiar sting of her disapproval. But then I remembered Helen's advice. I did not yell back. I did not defend myself. I just let her words hang in the air, exposing her own ugliness. It was a powerful lesson. Sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Helen also taught me about the importance of documentation. "From now on, Clara," she had said, "document everything. If you have a contentious conversation, send a follow-up email summarizing what was said. Keep a journal. Save receipts." In a he said, she said situation, the person with the better records usually wins. It was a cynical way to look at the world, but I knew she was right. I had been too trusting with Mark. I had assumed that our shared life meant shared goals and shared honesty. I would never make that mistake again. My flash drive of evidence was a testament to the power of documentation. In the months that followed, I had to untangle my life from Mark's in 1,000 small ways. I had to change my name on bank accounts, on utility bills, on my passport. Each change was a small act of liberation. It was like I was slowly, methodically, erasing him from my life, just as he had tried to erase me. One of the most satisfying moments came when I sold our shared car. It was a luxury SUV that Mark had insisted on buying, even though I had thought it was too extravagant. He had loved that car. He had spent his weekends washing and waxing it. It was a symbol of the life he had wanted, a life of appearances and status. I sold it to a dealership and used the money to buy a smaller, more practical car for myself. a car that suited my life, not his. I also had to deal with the tricky issue of mutual friends. Most of our friends had been his friends first. They had known him since college. When they heard about the divorce, they rallied around him. They invited him out for drinks. They offered him their support. I received a few polite but distant text messages. Sorry to hear you guys are splitting up. Hope you're doing okay. It hurt at first. I had thought they were my friends too, but I soon realized that their loyalty was to him.
And that was okay.
I did not need people in my life who would stand by a man who had done what he had done. I focused on nurturing my own friendships, the ones that were based on mutual respect and genuine affection. My circle of friends became smaller, but it was also much stronger. The discovery of the nanny cam in Mark's office continued to haunt me for a while. I never found out where he had placed it or what he had recorded. I had taken it with me when I left the house that day, and I had given it to Helen. She had advised me to just get rid of it. It is a violation of your privacy, she had said. But trying to access the footage could open up a new can of worms. Let it go. You have enough evidence as it is. I took her advice. I smashed the camera with a hammer and threw it in a dumpster. But the thought of it lingered. Had he been spying on me? For how long? It was a chilling reminder of how little I had known the man I was married to. It made me question everything about our life together. How many other secrets had he been keeping? As time went on, however, these thoughts began to fade. They were replaced by new memories, new experiences. My life was moving forward, and the past was losing its grip on me. My relationship with Ben was a big part of that healing process. He was the antithesis of Mark. He was grounded, secure, and completely transparent. There were no mind games, no hidden agendas. With him, what you saw was what you got. I remember the first time he came over for dinner. I was a nervous wreck. I had not cooked for a man in my own home since Mark. I was worried that my cooking would not be good enough, that the house would not be clean enough. All of Diana's old criticisms were echoing in my head. Ben must have sensed my anxiety. He walked into the kitchen, rolled up his sleeves, and started chopping vegetables. What can I do to help? He asked with a warm smile. I make a mean salad dressing. We cooked together, laughing and talking. The food was delicious. The conversation was easy. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at ease in my own home. I was not trying to impress anyone. I was not worried about being judged.
I was just being myself.
And it was enough. Ben's presence in my life helped me to see that a healthy relationship is not about power and control. It is about partnership and respect. It is about two people building a life together, side by side. It is about being a team. One weekend, Ben helped me build the new deck in my backyard. We spent 2 days sawing, hammering, and staining wood. It was hard work, but it was also incredibly rewarding. As we sat on the finished deck, sipping cold beers and admiring our handiwork, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. I had built this. We had built this. The house was no longer just a house. It was a home that I had fought for, a home that I had rebuilt, a home that was filled with love and laughter. It was a testament to my resilience, to my strength, to my ability to create a beautiful life out of the ashes of a broken one. I occasionally thought about Mark and Diana, trapped together in their small apartment, their dreams of wealth and luxury turned to dust. I did not feel hatred for them anymore. I did not even feel anger. I just felt a kind of detached pity. They had chosen a path of greed and deceit, and they were living with the consequences. Their prison was of their own making. My freedom, on the other hand, was something I had earned. I had faced the darkest moment of my life, and I had come out the other side, stronger and more whole than before. The suitcases on the porch had been a symbol of my expulsion. But the new key in my pocket was a symbol of my return. I had come home, and I was never leaving again. I remember the day I finally cleared out the last of Mark's belongings. He had left a few boxes in the attic, filled with old college textbooks, sentimental junk, and clothes he no longer wore. For months, I had avoided dealing with them. It felt like a final, painful link to my old life. But one Saturday, I woke up and decided that today was the day. I climbed the rickety ladder to the attic and dragged the boxes down. I opened them up and started sorting through the contents. It was like digging through an archaeological site of my failed marriage. There was the ugly sweater he had worn on our first date, the program from the concert where he had proposed, a photo album filled with pictures of a smiling, happy couple who no longer existed. I thought it would be a sad, emotional experience, but to my surprise, it was not. I felt a strange sense of detachment. It was like looking at the life of a different person. The feelings were gone. The pain was gone. All that was left was a collection of objects. I made two piles. A small pile of things to keep, mostly photos of my old dog, who had passed away a few years ago, and a large pile of things to get rid of. I packed everything into garbage bags and drove it to the local charity shop. As I watched the volunteer take the bags, I felt a final sense of release. I was letting go of the last remnants of my past. I was making space for my future. When I got home, the house felt lighter. The air felt clearer. I opened all the windows and let the fresh spring breeze blow through. I put on some music and danced around the living room. I was free. Truly and completely free. That evening, Ben came over. I told him what I had done. He listened, as he always did, with patience and empathy. "That must have been hard," he said. "I thought it would be," I replied. "But it was actually liberating." He smiled. "I am proud of you, Clara," he said. "You have come so far."
He was right.
I had. The journey had been a long one. There had been tears. There had been anger. There had been moments of doubt and fear. But I had never given up.
I had fought for myself.
I had fought for my home. And I had won. The next day, I was working in my garden, pulling weeds and planting new flowers. My hands were covered in dirt, and the sun was warm on my back. I felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. This was my life now. It was simple. It was quiet. And it was beautiful. I looked up at the house, my house. It stood strong and proud, a symbol of my resilience. The new locks on the doors, the new code on the garage, the new flowers in the garden. They were all a testament to my ability to rebuild, to create something new and better out of the wreckage of the past. I thought about the backward wedding date, that secret code that had been the key to unraveling their whole sordid plan. It was a symbol of their twisted logic, their belief that they could simply reverse the clock, undo our marriage, and take what was not theirs. But they had underestimated me. They had thought I would just disappear, that I would go quietly into the night. They had not counted on my strength. They had not counted on my resolve. I had taken their backward code, and I had turned it into a forward motion. I had moved on. I had built a new life. A life that was not based on secrets and lies, but on honesty and trust. A life that was not about appearances and status, but about genuine happiness and connection. As I stood there in my garden, my hands in the soil, I felt a surge of gratitude. Gratitude for my friends, for my family, for Ben. Gratitude for my own strength. And even in a strange way, gratitude for Mark and Diana. Because, without their betrayal, I might never have discovered the person I was capable of becoming. They had tried to break me, but in the end, they had only made me stronger. And for that, I would be forever grateful. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the house. My house. My home. My new beginning. And it was perfect. Thinking back on the whole ordeal, there were smaller moments of clarity that were just as important as the big, dramatic confrontation. I remember one evening, a few days after I had moved in with Sarah, I was scrolling through my old photos on my phone. I came across a picture from a family dinner at Mark and Diana's place a year earlier. In the photo, I was smiling, but my eyes looked tired. I was holding a glass of wine, and Diana was standing behind me, her hand on my shoulder. Her smile was tight and forced. At the time, I had thought it was a nice photo. But looking at it now, with the knowledge of what she had been planning, I could see the truth. I could see the tension in my own shoulders. I could see the possessiveness in her grip. I could see the lie behind her smile. It was a chilling realization. The signs had been there all along. I had just been too close to see them. I had been so invested in making the marriage work, in pleasing Mark, in winning Diana's approval, that I had ignored my own intuition. I had silenced that little voice in my head that was telling me something was wrong. That was a lesson I took to heart. From that day on, I promised myself that I would always listen to that voice. I would always trust my gut. It was my built-in alarm system, and I would never ignore it again. Another pivotal moment came during a conversation with my sister. She had always been my biggest cheerleader, and she was furious on my behalf. "I never liked him, you know," she had said during one of our late-night phone calls.
He was always so smooth.
Too smooth. And his mother? She looked at you like you were something she had scraped off her shoe. "Why did not you ever say anything?" I had asked, a little hurt. "Because you were happy," she had replied softly. "Or, at least, you seemed happy. And it was not my place to interfere. You had to see it for yourself." Her words made me realize that sometimes the people who love us the most have to let us make our own mistakes. They can be there to catch us when we fall, but they cannot walk the path for us. I had needed to learn this lesson on my own. And as painful as it was, it had made me stronger. The process of reclaiming my house was also a process of reclaiming my identity. For years, I had deferred to Mark's tastes. He had picked out the furniture. He had chosen the paint colors. He had vetoed my suggestions for art and decor. The house had been a reflection of him, not of us. Now I had a blank canvas. I spent weekends at flea markets and art fairs, looking for pieces that spoke to me. I painted the walls in bold, bright colors that made me happy. I filled the bookshelves with my favorite books. I created a space that was a true reflection of my personality. It was a joyful, creative process. And with every nail I hammered, with every picture I hung, I felt like I was rebuilding not just my home, but myself. My relationship with Ben was a revelation.
It was so easy.
There was no drama, no manipulation, no constant struggle for control. We communicated openly and honestly. We respected each other's opinions. We supported each other's dreams. I remember one day, we were trying to decide where to go for dinner. I wanted Italian.
He wanted Thai.
In my marriage with Mark, this would have turned into a long, drawn-out negotiation, with him trying to subtly manipulate me into choosing what he wanted. He would have said things like, "Are you sure you want all those carbs?" Or, "The last time we had Italian, you said you felt bloated." With Ben, it was different. He just said, "Okay, let's do Italian tonight, and we can do Thai tomorrow." It was that simple. It was a small thing, but it spoke volumes. It showed me that a relationship could be a partnership, not a power struggle. As the months turned into a year, and then 2, my life settled into a comfortable, happy routine. I had my work, my friends, my hobbies. I had my beautiful home, my peaceful garden. And I had Ben. One evening, we were sitting on the deck, watching the fireflies. He turned to me, his expression serious. "Clara," he said, taking my hand, "I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He pulled a small box out of his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant ring. Tears filled my eyes. Happy tears. I had never thought I would get married again. I had never thought I would be able to trust someone so completely. But Ben had shown me that love did not have to be a battlefield. It could be a safe harbor. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." We got married a few months later, in a small ceremony in my backyard, on the deck that we had built together. It was a perfect day, surrounded by the people who loved us. As I stood there saying my vows, I looked at Ben and I looked at my home, and I knew that I had finally found my happily ever after. It was not the one I had planned for. It was not the one I had thought I wanted. It was something better. Something real. Something I had built for myself, out of the ashes of a life that had been burned to the ground. The suitcases on the porch had been the end of one story. But they had also been the beginning of a new one. A story of strength, of resilience, of hope. A story of a woman who had lost everything, and in doing so, had found herself. It was my story, and it was just beginning.